Kumara Satsanga, Kumara Satsanga, Kawahrina, Kawahniriya, Kumara Satsanga, Kumara Satsanga.
This is the SANAT KUMARA. Welcome, my beloved students, to the 74th lesson of Namas University, Earth Spiritual University, the place and community that grows you into fully soul-guided and Shambhala-assisted human beings. Today, we talk about what went right and wrong after the initial creation of 48 fractals by the Divine. How Devine Creation unfolded. You remember that I told you last week that all names of the 48 fractals are light language. The names contain the respective mission. Mine was to orchestrate and administer God's plan. So naturally, it is not the first time that I have ended up as the SANAT KUMARA of a planet. I will give you 2 more examples. Salmani was to draft cosmic laws in accordance with the divine plan. Sisomar had to guard God's intention for his creation. After a while, our divine creator granted some the right to use their own creative free will to bring variety into the creation. All others were to continue to execute what was foreseen in God's plan. Most of those who were given the right to use their own creative free will squandered this privilege. Zadocus, the one you know as Satan, was most upset about it and asked the Divine for the privilege to extend the Divine's plan with his own creative free will as well. The Divine denied Satan's request. Anger grew in Satan. He and some others started to create their own things in their free time, and the Divine turned a blind eye to it as long as they did not neglect their duties. At some point, Satan proudly presented what he had created, hoping the Divine would applaud him and grant him his wish. At that time, Zadocus was the Divine's main advisor. He had much responsibility, like Wise One has now. The Divine denied his wish again. Satan took it even less kindly when the gift of creative free will was shared with the masses, but he, the most trusted, dutiful, and capable advisor, still got a no as an answer. His resentment grew gradually. The choices of the beings that had been gifted the grace of free creative will seemed frivolous and almost pathetic to him. They were like children in comparison to him, the Wise One, and others. A never-ending nagging began. Imagine that others far less capable than you would be granted more rights and freedom than you. How would you react? Well, at some point, some of the 48 fractals wished to pose an alternative to the Creator's plan. There were many conversations. It seemed tempting. Why obey the Divine when he makes such stupid choices? 20 of us soon figured out that what was behind the Divine's plan was much greater and better thought through, which seemed oh so obvious, than the ones discussing alternatives. Satan and a few others asked to cross over a threshold to create an alternative universe where they would be allowed to exercise their creative willpower in an experimental way. This was denied as well. Their services were needed with the divine, not elsewhere, and the divine needed to maintain the integrity of the system to implement and facilitate what was being created. The coordination required was enormous. As you probably guessed, this rejection stung even more with Satan and those who shared his feelings. But not all who were involved at this time wished to dissent. Most were more than happy to fulfill their duty with the divine. Satan and some others began to collude and gathered their resources to begin the foundation of an alternative system. But they were still limited by being denied creative free will. That did not mean that they did not have creativity. It just did not have influence on the timeline of creation, a crucial factor in the divine system. In their alternative universe, however, they could create their own timelines, artificial ones. Over the many universes, these artificial timelines created an ever-growing disturbance to the divine's universe and plan. The divine creator allowed them to indulge in this, like a knowing father tolerates much of a son's behavior. They experimented, tried many things, and with some success. They created their own rule sets, but their universe was essentially empty. It was just their place. Without willing participants, they were unable to test the system. They asked the divine to dispatch participants, but that was, of course, denied. Having invested so much time and effort into their project, they felt cheated. This builds even more resentment, and a type of jealousy developed. At that point, Satan decided to stop asking. He bridged the gap between their and the Creator's universe and infiltrated the light. Here, the rift between light and love creations and those of darkness began, and it turned into something unimaginably destructive. The rebellious had little success in bringing souls over into their realm voluntarily and permanently. So, they started preying on and corrupting the systems established by the divine. The consequences were far-reaching. This was not done out of hatred or spite. There was an immense yearning to be acknowledged. Those they forced or tricked into their system fell sick. What Satan and his colleagues had not realized was that this sickness was also affecting them. They were themselves full of plans, so the cracks that were appearing within themselves were barely noticeable at first in the grand scheme of things. They also did not notice their own gradual decline, becoming ever more loveless and crueler. Over time, their efforts became increasingly creative and forceful. They took more and more liberties, and violations of the divine order gradually increased. They became desensitized to the consequences, losing themselves in the process. After living in isolation and without that connection with the Creator, they got lost. They did not realize it till much later. Madness took over, and their judgment became more and more incomplete. Although they had enormous understanding of the functioning and the mechanisms of how the Divine's universe works, their understanding of why things had to play out in a certain way in the Divine's plan eluded them. They were blind in some ways. Without this knowledge and without this foresight carried by the Divine and His plan, they did not see what the consequences of their separate universe would be. Inadvertently, they destroyed the beauty of the Divine's universe more and more. Unable to face the guilt and shame that came over them, they removed their own guilt and their remorse. It had become too overwhelming. Empathy and responsibility were beyond them now. They hated themselves for what they had done. This hate in their growing madness was directed outward. Without remorse as a guide, they lost control of who they were and what they represented. The damage they did was astronomical. Without a need of reflection, they had stopped looking backwards. They were always consumed by their ambition and lost in it. Through their cunning, they have created systems to overcome and corrupt minds. They did not even realize that these traps for others reflected what they were doing to themselves. They had not just the fallen, deprived, and lost in hatred. They kept on digging deeper and deeper, and all they found was nothing, oblivion. There was no liberation in their efforts, not for them or anybody else. But our Divine Creator still loved them. Their madness needed to be overcome, and much needed to be healed. The Divine forgave them and asked them to come home into His realm again. They took His invitation, but the 12 prime evils were not the only ones who turned their backs on our Divine Creator, His plan, and His universes. There are 2 other groups of 8 each from the initial 48 fractals, the exotronos and the free folk. Satan was the leader of the in total 12 of the 48 fractals who on earth are known as prime evils and who turned against the divine, also known as the fallen angels. The exotronos created their own separate universe in the 20th dimension. They could not sustain their lives either and had to feed on all who remained in the light. The other 8 called themselves the free folk. The divine called them the 8 unaccounted for. They roamed the cosmos without creating anything, just learning, becoming wiser, refusing to take responsibility. The turning point towards the light in the Divine's plan came with the reunification talks as of January 2024. The 20 representing the Divine's light, the exotronos and the free folk, committed to the talks. Satan and his team participated, but they soon fell prey to their madness. They tried to exploit the kind hands reaching out to them and attempted to take over the Divine's universe. In consequence, the Divine could not but destroy them. What does that mean to Earth and all of you now? We will discuss it next week in Lesson 75. What I would like you to take away from today's lesson is the following. Perfection is only achievable in total oneness with the Divine once you have returned to the Divine Eternal Source. Until then, you practice love and light and the divine will be with you. At the very moment the divine created the 48 fractals and allowed for specific tasks, creation took on a dynamic of its own. It became imperfect. It was the pain in his heart, and against all his previous decisions, the divine concluded that he needed to destroy 12 of his initial 48 fractals. He had reached out to the prime evils as a loving, forgiving father, but when they attacked him as well, the divine had no choice but to protect the light. His light, love, and his plan can prevail again now. What we still need to go through on Earth and in our galaxy is to detect and dismantle all hidden structures and controlling systems the dark forces have established to manipulate you and exploit Earth. That, however, is none of your personal business. It is the mission of a qualified and dedicated team. This team includes the free folk, the exotronos, the middle management of the dark forces who rebelled against their 12 destroyed leaders, us from Shambhala, and 3 of our walk-ins. I will inform you about what you need to pay attention to now and refrain from using or doing to let Earth return to the path of light. You will later learn all about what happened during this mission in volumes 4 to 6 of my chronicles. What I ask of you, my beloved students, is to master yourself, master your own soul connection and the abilities given to you now with the 12-strand Sun Diamond DNA. The latest publication, the SANAT KUMARA, your 12-strand Sun Diamond DNA, tells you all about it. Use this knowledge. Master it. Let your soul, your heart, and your innate abilities guide you. Also, you cannot truly help others before you have mastered yourself. Point people who seek help toward our lessons at Namas University. Do not convince others with words. Let your own raising light in what it brings forth now do the talking. Finally, I have some announcements to make. My colleagues and I are delighted that you have started to register for our meet and greet on the 26th of July via the email icon on the website of Namas University. So far, beloved students from Austria, Belgium, Germany, the Netherlands, Switzerland, and the United States have registered. Please take this opportunity to bond with us, grow your library of mind, meet like-minded people, and explore the divine energies Aken has to offer. Secondly, after the summer break in August, Victoria from Ukraine will provide my regular lessons. Martina will keep you informed about what to pay special attention to, as well as unfolding events with special video messages. Thirdly, we are looking for 1, better 2 translators each for the podcast messages, from Russian into German, from Russian into English, into Spanish, into Hindi, into French, and vice versa. I also welcome new team members at Namas University with a professional background in translating and editing. We need to expand our reach with more books being available in more languages, translated to the highest possible level. Please contact Martina through the contact button for Namas University on my website, thesanatkumara.com, if you have such a professional background and want to serve with us. That is all for today. In Lesson 75, I will talk about the progress of the Divine's light taking back control in daily life on earth and what you need to pay attention to. Until then, my love and blessings to you all. The Sanat Kumara.
Kumara Satsanga, Kumara Satsanga, Kawairina, Kawairiya, Kumara Satsanga, Kumara Satsanga.